Hello, everyone. We will now begin the second lesson on Psalms. This lesson will also deal with Psalms for people who are ill. We are talking about Psalm 88 and Psalm 41. Psalm 41, we will see that in these Psalms, on the one hand, they share elements with the two Psalms we studied in the previous lesson, but they also have other directions that, in my opinion, are very surprising. So let's open the discussion. Wait a moment. We will start with Psalm 88. And first of all, let's begin with a question. Is it really even part of the book of Psalms? Does it contain only optimistic Psalms? Is it the case, as we saw in Psalm 6 and Psalm 30, that the sick person turned to God and God heard him? Is this true everywhere in the book of Psalms, or are there other situations? So first, let's turn to an example from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 3. This is about the prayer of Moses, our teacher. We know that Moses was sentenced, yes, he was punished not to enter the land of Israel because of the story of the waters of Meribah in the desert. And in Deuteronomy chapter 3, there is a prayer of Moses is presented in which he asks to enter the land. In verse 25, for example, please let me cross over and see the good land that is beyond the Jordan, that good hill country and Lebanon. He is literally standing on the threshold of the land of Israel, the promised land, and cannot enter it. And he explains in the following verse 26, he explains that God was angry with him because of them. Yes, because of the story of the spies. But the Lord was angry with me because of you and would not listen to me. And not only did he not listen, he also told him to stop asking, right? God said, enough from you. Do not speak to me anymore about this matter. I don't want to hear this request from you anymore. So here's an example where a great man, the greatest of the prophets, yes, Moses himself asks, and God does not listen to him. There is another prominent example in the book of Jeremiah, Jeremiah the prophet. He lived during the time of the destruction and the exile to Babylon. And in chapter 7, in the opening verses, God tells him that there will be destruction. There will be destruction. And after this message from verse 16, God says to Jeremiah, I have given you this message, but you are not to pray on their behalf, right? And you do not pray for these people and do not raise a cry or prayer on their behalf and do not plead with me, for I will not listen to you. You have nothing to pray for. You have nothing to ask of me. This is it, I'm here, but I will not listen to you. I will not heed this prayer, this particular prayer. So we can see that there are situations in which a person's prayer is not heard. And the question is whether, yes, that optimistic spirit we left with in the previous lesson, when a sick person turns to God and God listens to him, is that always true? So let's look at Psalm 88. This is the longer psalm. Do you see this psalm already has 19 verses? And we will delve into it. We won't read the whole thing, but I'll read it now in Hebrew. if that's all right with you. Maybe it's better from here. A psalm of the sons of Korah for the leader, upon Mahalath Leanoth, a maskil of Heman the Ezrahite. That's the heading of the psalm. And then he describes his prayer. O Lord God of my salvation, I cry out day and night before you. He cries out to God day and night. Let my prayer come before you. Incline your ear to my cry. He asked God to listen to him because now he describes his suffering. For my soul is full of troubles and my life draws near to Sheol. I am counted among those who go down to the pit. I am like a man without strength. Yes, he says, I am about to die. Yes, I am really just about to be like those who go down to the pit. Yes, and like a man, like a person who has no strength at all. Among the dead I am free, like the slain who lie in the grave, whom you remember no more, and who are cut off from your care. And also in verse 7, he describes this feeling that he is already inside the grave. You have placed me in the lowest pit, in dark places, in the depths. Your wrath lies heavy upon me, and you have afflicted me with all your waves. The perception he presents here is that he truly feels this is happening to him because of God. That is, God is angry with me, right? Verse 8. You have intensified your wrath. You are so angry with me, and you are bringing upon me these crises. And even more than that, verse 9, you have taken my friends far from me. You have made me repulsive to them. I am confined and cannot escape. You have also distanced from me all the people who helped me, everyone I could rely on. There's basically only you are left, and I ask you to listen to me. I'm about to die. Yes, it's a psalm that truly describes a person in a very dramatic situation. And the question is there any development? Is there, will he later tell us, oh, yes, God heard, and now I believe more, and I am certain, and thank you for saving me. So if we look at the following verses 10 to 19, we can see that he repeats this. He repeats this and he says, my eye grows dim from my affliction. I have called upon you, Lord, every day. I have spread out my hands to you. I pray every day. And he says, after all, it's not worth it for me to die. Because once again, we recognize this motif from the Psalms 36, from Psalms 6 and 30. Will you perform wonders for the dead? Will the departed rise up and thank you, Selah? Will your kindness be recounted in the grave, your faithfulness in destruction? Will your wonders be known in the darkness, or your righteousness in the land of oblivion, right? After all, not again, it's not worth it for me to die. There. No one praises you or honors you. But what do? I pray all the time, right? Verse 14, in the morning my prayer comes before you. That is, first thing in the morning, from the very start of the day, I'm already praying. Now, in verses 15, 16, 17, and 18, once again, he describes Itham, essentially. God has abandoned him. Why, Lord? You reject my soul, you hide your face from me. He feels a hiding of the face. He doesn't feel a connection. If there is any connection, it's only the anger of God who is angry with him. Upon me, verse 17, upon me your wrath has settled, your terrors have destroyed me. Yes, I am very afraid. And in verse 19, he repeats this accusation again. You have distanced from me loved ones and friends. My acquaintances are in darkness, right? All those who love me and are close to me are in darkness. They are not by my side. So what is going on in this psalm? What kind of mood, what kind of spirit is there in this psalm? So I think you can really sense that this is a psalm that expresses great difficulty and perhaps truly despair over his situation. And also, besides the fact that he calls out to God, he doesn't hear that echo of someone listening to him or someone helping him. No one is helping him, not from any person, and not even God. There is no one. So this accusation that repeats in verses Tet and Yud Tet, verses 9 and 19. Yes, you have distanced my acquaintances from me, or distanced from me a loving friend, is explained by Rabbi Menachem Meri, a commentator who lived in the 13th century in Provence. And he says as follows: what does distanced mean? You have turned them into strangers. How do people become distant from one another? Each one was caught up in his own troubles and did not pay attention to his friend's troubles. Yes, people often grow apart from each other because they are preoccupied with their own problems. So not only are you not helping me, but you have actually caused troubles for other people. And then they don't help me. Yes, there is, I would say, a very strong accusation here from the one praying towards God. Now, if we look at the structure of the psalm as a whole, at how it is built, then we can see that the first two verses are a call for help. Yes, he wants God to help him. After that, he describes his suffering, his great distress. And verses 7 to 9 are very harsh verses that say, you, God, you are responsible for this. You caused this suffering. Now, in fact, this psalm is structured in two parts. It has two stanzas. The first stanza is from verse 2 to verse 9, and the second stanza is from verse 10 to verse 19. How do we know this? Because, in fact, verse 9 and verse 19 are verses that repeat the same argument, the same accusation, that you have distanced from me all my loved ones, all my close ones. So now, what is actually the difference between the first stanza and the second stanza? If there is just repetition here, the second stanza also calls for help. But notice that he calls for help every day. That is, if in the first stanza it was during the day, I cried out to you during the day, and I cried out to you at night, then in the second stanza he says, it's been a long time now. Yes, every day. In the second stanza, he also sort of addresses God. Listen, it's worth it for you. Yes, there is a good reason for you to save me and for me not to die. But in the second stanza, there is also a kind of acceptance or recognition that God is not listening to him, even though he is constantly praying. He doesn't listen to him. He neglects him. He hides his face from him. And in fact, he is the one responsible for his suffering. That is to say, you could say that the difficult feeling, this despair that was present in the first stanza, only grows stronger in the second stanza, and there is no glimmer of hope here. There is just one big sense of despair here. And not only is there despair here, there is also anger towards God. Yes, there is blame here, or more precisely, an accusation that God is responsible for my suffering. And it's interesting that many commentators have dealt with the question, what is a psalm like this doing in the Bible? What is it doing in the book of Psalms? After all, the book of Psalms is supposed to strengthen a person's faith, his trust in God, to encourage him to maintain a relationship with God. And here, there are only difficult emotions. Yes, only the expression of suffering, but there is no opening for hope here. So there are various suggestions about this psalm. There's a suggestion that this psalm is not just a personal psalm, but one that speaks more broadly. It tells a history about the state of the people, about how much the people have suffered over the years. But I think that this psalm can definitely be a personal psalm, because we know that the Bible gave a platform for even for difficult things, even for very hard feelings. It did not hide them. Not everything is perfect, not even in the relationship between a person and God. There are situations where a person is desperate and has no hope. And even this connection with God does not open up hope for him. Maybe it gives him someone to blame, but not more than that. And we know this, for example, from the book of Job. The book of Job is a book in which the Bible gave a platform to Job, who is suffering. Among other things, he is also a sick man. He became afflicted with boils, and he describes his suffering, and he describes very harsh things there, what he thinks about his relationship with God. So this is indeed the only psalm in Psalms that presents such a harsh indictment and such difficult emotions, but it also has its place, because we as human beings, we also have tough moments. We have crises of faith. We have these situations. And this is the psalm in Hebrew. This psalm, which is Psalm 88, this abbreviation P also means tin. A trash can is a pit. It's like a psalm that describes a situation of being in a pit where a person is in very, very great distress. So this is the psalm of despair, let's call it that. Usually in the Bible, in times of crisis, you can see all kinds of examples. For example, in Psalm 44, which describes a very, very severe military defeat with great disgrace. And the response there is the opposite of our psalm, right? It's a psalm that says, we still do not forget you and we follow after you, even when things aren't going well for us, even when it's hard for us. We do not turn to another God, right? We continue to believe in you, even though you are not helping us. There is another psalm, Psalm 22, which also describes a person who is in very, very great distress. The Midrash says that this is the psalm that Queen Esther recited when she was in the house of Ahasuerus, and she didn't know how to get out of the whole situation with Haman, and she prayed this psalm. In any case, this is also a psalm that begins with a person praying. Verse 3, my God, I call by day, but you do not answer. I call out to you during the day, and you do not answer me, and by night, but I have no rest. That is, you don't. I turn to you both by day and by night, and nothing you do not answer me. In contrast to the past, when you used to answer, now you do not turn to me. You distance yourself from me. Yes, but his response is still nevertheless a plea. Yes, he is asking for help. He is asking God to help him, to save him, not to distance himself from him. And in the end, he promises that he will thank him publicly, as if to say it is worthwhile for God to answer him. So this is what is usually accepted in the Bible, and our psalm is very unusual. Now let's move on to another psalm, which will actually wrap up the topic of the Psalms of the Psalms of the sick. This is Psalm 41. Psalm 41. Let's dive into this psalm. It opens with a heading that declares, blessed is he who considers the weak. The Lord will deliver him in times of trouble. First of all, there's an opening here that says that whoever turns to the weak will be blessed. And who is the weak? The weak, according to the continuation of the psalm, and as the biblical commentators also say, is not just a poor person or something like that, but rather someone who is ill. That is, someone who comes to visit the sick. And this psalm, in fact, deals with the subject of visiting the sick. Oh, what does the visitor do? Rabbi David Kim, he says, the visitor comes and tries to help the sick person. Yes, that's the primary purpose of visiting the sick. This is a person who is weak and needs help, who needs to be given medicine or maybe help to keep his household running. Yes, so it's important to come and visit him, and fortunate is the one who does so. What does maskil mean? He says, it's someone who comes, observes, looks, and sees what that person needs. Sometimes the patient doesn't ask for help himself. Now, further on in verses 3 and 4, there are blessings. They bless, yes, they bless that person. The question is, who is it referring to? The visitor or the patient? So actually, many commentators say that these are blessings that the visitor gives or prays for the patient. May God protect him and give him life. Yes, he needs life. May God support him on his sickbed. You have turned all his bed in his illness. Yes, he prays that God will support him. Yes, this patient is in a very serious condition. He is on his deathbed, close to dying, and he prays that he will recover and become healthy. In fact, yes, according to the Radak, this prayer can also be things that the visitor says to the patient himself. Yes, he comes to encourage him and strengthen him. There's no ramp. There's no ramp. Yes, he doesn't just pray for him. And actually, it can be said that there are 3 purposes or 3 reasons why it is important to visit a sick person. The first reason, as we mentioned in the first verse, is to see what he needs, what kind of help he needs. The second reason or the second purpose is to pray for him, to ask on his behalf. Sometimes the patient himself cannot pray, cannot ask God to heal him. And the third reason for visiting the sick, it's to encourage them. Yes, to tell them, yes, listen, it will be okay. You will get better. And we know how much a sick person, right? His soul also needs encouragement. So that's what comes up at the beginning of the psalm. The person who comes to visit the sick and what he does there. Now, by the way, we also know from the Bible another example where people prayed for the sick, right? Moses prayed for Miriam when she was ill with leprosy. This is a story told in the book of Numbers, chapter 12. And there, the Bible describes Moses' prayer for Miriam's recovery. And Moses cried out to the Lord, saying, "Please, God, heal her now." In fact, it's a very, very short prayer, but it's a request from God that is spoken from the heart. The text says, and he cried out, meaning he was very moved. He said it, and indeed afterwards it is told that she was healed. Now, if we take a closer look at the rest of the psalm, we can clearly see that specifically from verse 5 to verse 13, there is a noticeable change. The psalm actually shifts to the first person. I said, yes, be gracious to my soul. Now, in fact, the patient is speaking. And he is talking about his own prayer. Soon we'll see all sorts of other people. But if earlier we said that this is so the person who comes to visit prays for or blesses the sick person. Now the speaker is the patient himself. I said, so let's see what. Oh, wait, what do we have in the second part of the psalm? What does he say? So first of all, he tells about himself. What does he say? What is in verse 5? I said, Lord, be gracious to me, heal my soul, for I have sinned against you. He prays that God will heal him. And in fact, he takes responsibility, right? For I have sinned against you. And he doesn't blame God for just attacking him for no reason and making him sick. Rather, he expresses that he is responsible for being ill because apparently he sinned. Now, from verse 6 onward, it's his enemies who are speaking. Yes, my enemies said. So that means, once again, we're shifting back to the enemies. And now here the enemies are speaking. They say all sorts of things. What do they say? So Radak suggests here that verses 6 through 10 are actually speaking. They are contrary to the words of the beginning of the psalm. At the beginning of the psalm, it talks about a person, good people. I call this the good visitor. That is, the good people who came to visit him and they pray and want him to get well. In contrast, in the second part of the psalm, it talks about bad people who say all sorts of things. They see that he is sick, that he is close to dying, so they actually want him to die, right? They wish for exactly the opposite of what the good people do. And if they do come to visit, then it's all hypocrisy. They say one thing and mean another. They don't actually say what they really think. Now, in fact, what emerges from the flow of the psalm is really that the first part is about the good visitors. In the second part, there are the bad visitors. And in both parts, for each of them, the author of the psalm presents a prayer of the poet, of the sick person, regarding his situation. In this verse, it's a prayer about his illness. In verses 11 and 13, or actually 12 first. These are verses that talk about his enemies. This is somewhat reminiscent of Psalm 6, the sixth psalm that we studied. The last verse does not belong to the psalm. It is a conclusion, a signature of this section in Psalms. Psalms is divided into 5 books. And at the end of each section, there is a blessing to God. So it's not related to our discussion. Now, actually, when we look at this psalm in particular, as one that specifically deals with visiting the sick, we can, as we reflect on this, get the impression that the subject of visiting the sick is not a simple one. It's actually quite a loaded topic. We know both within the Bible and outside of it of many texts that deal extensively with the subject of visiting the sick. Visiting the sick is part of the mitzvah of acts of kindness, since one must do good and help other people to others. But it's not a simple topic, and maybe we'll talk about it more later, another time. So once again, I wish you all good health, and we'll continue the discussion next time. Hello, everyone. All the best.